But we captured,
I'll send you
go
an
there.
email.
The boys are coming in.
I'll
So
have
that'll
to-
be good.
Cool.
This is
I'll
Pop's
send you
nephew.
the date.
1.5-year-old, but we haven't met yet because he was born during COVID. They're gonna stay with us like the 23rd before Christmas. So,
Really?
Hope for good weather and have to travel.
oh my gosh, there's a chance of snow next.
It's snowing in Walla Walla. It's good. It's like a lot of- Smackdown. I know. Whatever it was. Good chance. Point of trying to get a word in yet. I think it's to it. Just the point of.
Just in the middle of.
I'll drop this. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the December 15th edition of the Lexington City Council. Welcome to you all. Thank you for being here. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And first item of business, if you all will please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. Next item is consideration of the agenda, and we have a couple of additions for your consideration. Item 5.2 will be a presentation from Julie Goyette from the Rockbridge Regional Library. And under item 16, the city manager has asked for a closed session to discuss real estate negotiations. And we'll read that into when we go into closed session. Are there any other adjustments or corrections or thoughts? Unless there's an objection with those two additions, we'll let the agenda be modified and approved. Hearing no objections, it is approved. Next item on the agenda, presentations. And I would like to call on Eric Wilson with the Rockbridge Historical Society. Eric, welcome.
Thank you and hello. Get set up.
Good evening, and thank you for sporting the Trojan colors this evening. Looking good.
Gear,
Looking good.
gear, it's good gear. You looking around too? While I get set up, I'll say thanks for the continued commitments and care. Not only for your leadership and hearing about history, but sharing that with the community through Zoom and other things. It's a great way to increase the access. This is a preview of the program that we are doing on Sunday that you'll have heard about in various ways. And we want to give you a couple tastes of it in advance. I'm going to quick click through a bunch of catchy slides, but we'll have them in a slide deck you could revisit. This is focused on Glasgow. And I know I'm not speaking to Glasgow Town Council, but one of the things we want to stress in this program and others is how important it is to stress community connections between our different localities and our networks and organizations, and not think of them as cordoned terrains. It won't take far, including a conversation Janie and I just had, to find out how closely Glasgow and Lexington family ties, personal ties have, perhaps you among them. I'll note here at the top of the slide as well, our partnership with Washington and Lee University Library and the Rockbridge Regional Library. Glad to have fellow board member and library director, Julie Goyette here. This is led in part, some of you may know this book, Linda Mundy Norris Miller. This was produced for the centennial 30 years ago now. Her pictures, her research is key. A number of other archivists and figures and partners you'll know well. On the right, Tom Camden and Linda will be our key presenters in providing broad overview before we have a kind of roundtable presentation from Clarence Martin, Bridget Thompson Marshall, and Brandel Branch will be our three community voices to give a different kind of conversational flavor. A lovely view of Glasgow, nestled in the rivers and hills, a rather destructive view. I think this is the 85 flood you see here. Glasgow at what might have been its coldest, if you can't make that out, that's ice on the river there. Sent out on our ice day. This must be Glasgow at its oldest, thanks to Mark Klein in bringing the Neolithic back. 1890, even before the town was chartered in 1892, Glasgow had its own newspaper. You'll see that. It's town plan that looks very much like others. And if you've never seen the development plan for Lexington in 1892, and maybe you have, but it's a fascinating vision in comparison to what you see here, how this might have become a different sort of railroad town around the same time. Baldwin Echo's department store in downtown Glasgow, the top 2 stories burned in 1940, the bottom remains. On the left, the Rockbridge Hotel, which you'll never have seen, but if you go out by Stonewall Paintball today, you can see the footprint of where that would be. Glasgow students in the 1930s, from 39 to 82, the school operated downtown. This is in 1954, the year of the Brown decision. Around the same time, this picture is taken of the Black School in northern Glasgow, fire drill there. And as you well know, Lilburn Downing was created to serve not simply the students of Lexington, but the entire county. So it's important to remember that the lives of Glasgow students and alumni were very much part of this community as well. I know some of the members on the right in the last graduating class were from the community. On the left is the first. Basketball teams from Natural Bridge High School and Downing High School. And seeing how these both separate and bridge. One of our presenters is a cheerleader there and one of the early integrated cheerleading squads at Natural Bridge High, and that is Linda Mundy's own cheerleading megaphone. It just happened to be in our collections. As school consolidation comes, those terms shift. To wrap this up, you'll see sheriffs and cops, some fires and firefighters. We've got governors and generals on the left, Governor Fitzhugh Lee, Dr. Cleveland, notable leading women still living in modern memory, fairgrounds, baseball teams where people on Sunday will actually be able to come and pick out their relatives and help us fill in some of the blanks perhaps. Masonic leaders, Principal Thompson, bottom right, was the longtime leader of the Glasgow School, and the new community center in Glasgow is named for him. The Locker Industries, Burlington, James Lee's Mohawk Carpet Factory, give us all a different vision of this place that we know. It's another Rockbridge crossroads, southern hub of our county, connects so many things together. And we'll leave on that centennial picture. The quilt that is in their town hall. I don't know if you've been in that entryway, but for the centennial, these were pieced together. We've got a 250th coming up. Maybe we'll have a big old quilt or something else creative in our own crowdsourcing. So we hope you and community members will see us there on Sunday. And certainly through the year, we count on more good local history outreach ahead.
Eric just confirmed Sunday at 2:30
p.m. Natural Bridge Elementary School Gymnasium. And we'll also have like display tables and people kind of crowdsourcing their own thing. So people can come early and browse and look at that. 2:30 to 4.
Terrific. Thank you for being with us and giving us a moment in history, and fun to see the pictures of those that came before us and the good works that they did. Thank you for being with us, and have a great holiday.
You all as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to call on Julie Goyette for a report and update from the Rockbridge Regional Library. Julie, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Good evening, and thank you all for your continued support of the library and for inviting me here tonight, squeezing me into your agenda. I appreciate that. Much has changed since the last library update. I'm happy to report that the library is doing well, even as we have recovered from the worst of COVID-19. The library system serves a region of 40,000 residents, which covers the cities of Lexington and Buena Vista, the counties of Bath and Rockbridge, and the towns of Goshen and Glasgow. In FY 2022, our door counts were up 66%. Borrowers were up 55%, and reference questions are up 60%. These sound like spectacular stats, don't they? But before, in 2021, they were pretty bad. So we're climbing out of that hole. Our 5 locations and bookmobile were visited over 100,000 times during FY 2022. At the end of the year, we had 14,640 registered borrowers, which is about 37% of our regional population. That's lower than we are normally. We usually get about half or more, which is good. This is still lower than pre-COVID, but we are recovering from that, and we are increasing those numbers. The online registration form that we have added to our website makes it much easier for people to sign up for a library card. And public computer use is up 36%, even as people are still using their devices, their phones, their tablets. We're still seeing a lot of people coming in to use the library computers. Print circulation, the books that you go in and pull off the shelf, is up 13% rather. Our biggest challenge for FY 2022 was program attendance. We increased our programs, but the people were still pretty hesitant to come to the programs. So there was a pickup at the end of the fiscal year, but at the beginning, people were still hesitant to bring their children out, that sort of thing. Zoom programs remained popular for book clubs and for speakers. Ebook use is up 96% with over 30,000 checkouts. This became extremely popular during COVID, and we've just kept rolling with that. We learned during the worst part of the COVID that we needed more electronic resources. These include Overdrive for ebooks and e-audiobooks, and Learning Express, which offers education for all ages, test prep and a career center. Our Libby app for reading and listening. If you're not aware of that, it's a wonderful app to use for books in the library without having to come to the library. Statistics are all wonderful and helpful, but I believe that when we consider the success of the library system, we have to consider the value added to our communities, which include, of course, the city of Lexington. Some of the value added includes mobile printing from anywhere. We use Printch app, and you can send your document at 2:00 in the morning and go pick it up from the library when we're open. Mobile hotspots for patrons without internet access, or visitors who need to get internet access right away. They can come into the library and check those out. They're very popular. Fairfield lockers. These will be operable any day now. As BARC is looking for permits from Dominion, I believe there's a little bit of a lag there. But this will allow people who live in Fairfield and beyond an opportunity to pick up and drop off materials at those lockers in Fairfield. We also offer career online high school, where students that weren't able to complete their diploma can come back. They can explore programs, child development, for instance, or nursing, and they can get certificates in those programs as they complete their diploma. We are one of 3 pilot programs in the state. This is offered through the Library of Virginia. Lexington Library has also been designated as a passport acceptance facility by the Department of State. You're probably aware of that. That income more than offsets the loss in fines that we eliminated in September of 2021. Maker programs where kids create and build together are focusing more on art now, and that includes drawing and some improv, which is wonderful. They really love that. We also have Pokemon Go, which is for the kids after school. They kind of get their yayas out and really enjoy one another. Family movie nights with popcorn, really popular. The We Can Read book club for children who have just started reading chapter books because they need book clubs too. That's also popular. And then of course we have Book the Librarian when you need some more time with your devices or you have questions and take more time. Kindergarten readiness kits. These are free to families with a kindergarten. And we offer ancestry.com, but it's only available inside the libraries. That's kind of a licensing thing. Other highlights include TLC Go, which is our integrated library system, or our catalog. Means you can bring your phone in and you can check out your book while you're standing in the stacks. You don't necessarily have to have interaction, which is pretty great. We also have monitors for the service desk, which you may have noticed if you've been in the library. They offer information on events around the system and information on resources for patrons as they stand in line. And the local history center, which Eric may have referred to. We've started a centralized location for our local history and genealogy and programming. This doesn't mean that we take local history away from any library. We just kind of have a centralized location when people need to find something, and we have an expert in-house that can handle that. And a new location for our Goshen Library. That's all I have. What questions do you have for me? And thank you again.
Okay. Members of council have any questions? While you ponder, Julie, I have 3 questions.
Okay.
With your numbers, have you found that the foot traffic, I think as you referred to it, is it back to 2019 levels or are you still lagging from?
We are very close to 2019. Yes.
I know the senior center has, I can't remember exactly what they call it, but a lunch that they rotate around the county. And right now, I think for Lexington, it's in the Piavano building. I was just curious if you had any interaction or coordination with the senior center, which is based out of Buena Vista, of course.
Did prior to COVID. We also had the memory, I'm trying to think of what that was called. It wasn't the memory lab, but it was a memory through VPAS, actually.
Right.
We worked with them. So we typically partner with these organizations, but we have not, I'm saying this, I don't believe so, Frank. I'm not sure about that. I can check.
Gotcha. The other was any collaborations with Mountain Gateway with the high school education, high school diploma programming that you're doing. Is there any coordination with Mountain
We
Gateway?
are reaching out to everybody, people that coach for the GEDs, Mountain Gateway. And also we're just trying to look into guidance counselors in the high school that may know some students that have since moved on, but might be interested in this program. So we are reaching out right now to find candidates.
Terrific. Partnerships always net good results, I believe.
They do.
So,
They do. Very important.
excellent. Members of council have any questions?
I just want to compliment a program that you just mentioned was the passports, be able to renew them. It's a kind of a niche offering, and it was incredibly efficient, helpful, a great process that my family had to come in. We made an appointment. They took us to a private room and we just did it all because it was 4 of us, and it was excellent. So compliments to the library for undertaking that and serving the community.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that. I will take that back to staff.
Great. Julie, thanks for being with us. Have a wonderful holiday and our best to your staff and all the citizens that come to visit our regional library.
Thank you so much. You all too. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Take care. Next item on the agenda, I believe, is consideration of minutes. We have the December 1st work session and regular meeting. Those were in your packet. Unless there are any critiques or changes or observations, we will let those minutes stand as presented and they are approved. Next item is citizens' remarks and comments. Invite and look forward to hearing from citizens to talk about things that are not on the agenda perhaps. And would open the mic. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to council this evening? Could be your first council meeting and you want to harass an outgoing council member or something of that nature? Hearing none, I will close the citizens' remarks and comments at 7:17. Thank you all again for being here, and we'll move into the consent agenda. Item there, resolution authorizing lease purchase financing.
Mayor, I failed to mention, but we did send later today another item that is authorization for certification of signatory for VDOT.
Oh, yeah.
That was to authorize myself as city manager to sign documents from VDOT that support projects and funding for our projects here through the VDOT.
Right. So that would be item 9.2. Everyone received that and aware of that item and its addition. From the nods, I'll take a yes. And with that, I will ask for council's consideration of the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, can I just highlight the interest rate that is publicized in the memo, because we had a presentation at our previous meeting that thought it might be in the mid 4s, and it actually will come in at 3.4679%, which is a considerable difference and very beneficial to the city of Lexington and the taxpayers. So I just wanted to highlight that. But I'd like to also make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Consent agenda has no discussion. Ms. Strawn,
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Ayers.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. Next item are reports and communications in the Blue Ridge Resource Authority. Mr. Smith.
Blue Ridge Resource Authority met on Monday. Quick updates. All solid waste is now going into cell 2. Cell 1 is not accepting any more waste, but still remains open because if trying to close it right now would be considered premature and also very expensive at this point. So we're leaving it open as we gain airspace and can possibly put more material in cell one. Our leachate numbers have gone up quite a bit, as you might expect after all the rain we've had. And we also adopted an ordinance to write off bad debt that's over right now a year old, which totals, it's not a large number, it's around $3,000 or $4,000. So that will be off the books, but we're still accepting payment on those late obligations, but really don't expect any. And that, the last thing is, the contractor that was supposed to reseed sections of the landfill has not upheld their obligation. So we're working with the contractor to see how we can get that resolved. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And we'll look forward to talking trash in the new year. Not getting any cheaper. Main Street Lexington, Ms. Strawn.
Main Street Lexington met Tuesday, and you can play Love Lex Lotto and play it now and turn in your completed card by December 23rd for a chance to win a $1,000 shopping spree. And join us for a new Christmas activity this year. Tour downtown churches from 4 to 6 p.m. tomorrow, Friday, December 16th. We'll have free gift wrapping of your purchases made downtown is available this Saturday, December 17th from 2 to 5 p.m. in the Gin Ballroom. And if you are unsure of the perfect gift for someone on your list, consider a Main Street Lexington gift certificate. They are available at Just Game, Shenandoah Attic, and Victorian Parlor, or at the Main Street office, or you can buy it on the Main Street website as well. And I'd like to give a huge thank you to everyone who helped organize and participated in the Christmas parade and the Jingle Bell Run. Both events were very fun and well attended. Rebecca estimated that there were almost 1,000 people at the candlelight processional, which is wonderful. And we may actually have to find a new venue to finish at because it's getting pretty crowded in Hopkins Green. And the parade was well attended. The weather was perfect. And Scott Dameron was our grand marshal for the parade. And thank you, David, for judging at the parade as well. And the Jingle Bell Run, even though it was a rainy day, there was a great turnout with that. There were over 200 runners participating. So a lot of fun events. That's all I have.
Very good. Any questions for Ms. Strawn? Thank you for that report, and thank you for all the good work Main Street Lexington does. Planning Commission.
Planning Commission met Thursday, December 8th, and the Planning Commission voted to approve the conditional use permit application by Echelon Resources for development of the Spotswood property for a 62-unit multifamily housing neighborhood by a vote of 4-2. And the conditional use permit will come before council at our first meeting in January, on January 5th. And that's all I have unless there's any questions.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Strawn. Doesn't appear to be any questions. Rockbridge Regional Tourism Board. Mr. Ayers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The board didn't have a regular meeting this month. Instead, we met yesterday for a half-day workshop at the Horse Center for Drive 2.0, and there were about 24 community members in attendance, and Chuck was there. And together we brainstormed how to develop the region's outdoor tourism offerings. The workshop was a requirement to receive a $20,000 Virginia Tourism Corporation grant. And while we aren't pinned down on how specifically that grant has to be spent, an idea that gained a lot of traction and interest among the participants was a 2 to 5 year plan to develop and promote Jordan's Point Park and Glen Morey Park jointly as a trail and river circuit with kayak and biking rentals and returns at each end. And that's why Mr. Byther's request tonight for a permit to operate a kayak bike rental at Jordan's Point is especially timely. And Chuck, what did you think of the event?
It was good energy, a lot of good feedback on programming and ideas that all funneled into this. And we had a lot of consensus. It wasn't 3 separate ideas. Everybody kind of had the same idea all at the same time. So that was encouraging.
It did seem that Jordan's Point Park was a central focus of everyone's from all different communities. This was my last tourism meeting, and I just want to say what a great pleasure it was working with Jean Clark and her amazing crew at Regional Tourism.
And it was also the last meeting for board member Corey Bergstresser, and it looks like his replacement on the board will be Great Valley Farm Brewery's Nathan Bailey. Leslie's already mentioned the downtown holiday event, so I just want to plug a couple unusual but popular annual events coming up at the Horse Center in January. On January 7th, it's the Munster Truck Show. So it's a great family event. If you have children, tickets for adults are $20, $10 for your kids. And then on January 27th is the BMX USA Blue Ridge Nationals race. This is I believe it's the third year we have done this, and they had a 3-year contract with us, but we're already renegotiating for in another 3 years. It's been a big success. So that's on the 27th through the 29th, and that brings a lot of kids, BMX riders, and their families to the community. So it's a great tourism event. And that's all I have.
Outstanding. I'd say the BMX, if I remember correctly, it brings children of all ages
Yes,
because
true.
there's some 60,
Adults.
70-year-old BMX riders.
Yeah.
As I recall.
True.
A good time to be had in our fair city.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dennis. Rockbridge Area Recreation Organization, Mr. Ziegler.
We met last week, and I'll just briefly update the fact that we have about 380 boys and girls playing basketball this winter, and they comprise 41 teams. So 41 teams means a lot of coaches and a lot of scheduling of gyms. And so we do utilize 8 gyms throughout the county and the city. And so I always like to highlight that in our partnership with the schools. And we also have just under 40 wrestlers signed up, including a few young ladies that are wrestling. And so that makes that program really good. And we appreciate our cheer squads. We had some cheerleaders participate in the Christmas parade, and they were tremendous. So just wanted to highlight that. And we want to thank them for representing Raro. That's my report.
They got first place in Buena Vista.
So that's good.
Thank you, Mr. Ziegler. And also, it takes a lot of coaches. It also takes a lot of referees. I know they all need glasses, but they're great folks. And those in the audience, if you have a hankering to work with the children of our community, Raro is a great place to go and experience and meet the next generation of leaders. So thank you, David. Next time is Threshold, Ms. Alexander.
No report.
Thank you, ma'am. Maury Service Authority, Mr. Alligood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Maury Service Authority Board met this week for its, they did 2 meetings, they combined 2 meetings this week. And we did get the report from the consultants on the wastewater plant estimates. And the wastewater plant estimates as presented included an escalation clause for the projected price increases, cost increases. This is kind of a typical thing. And the total, I'm going to keep you in suspense for another minute there. Previously, I had mentioned that it was in the neighborhood of 40 million. I kept saying, hold on to your wallets for 40 million. Currently, the big number is 68 million. And it's broken down into the 2 parts. One part is categorized as deferred maintenance, and that deferred maintenance is in the neighborhood of 20 million. This is the phrase people have heard, kicking the can down the road kind of things that now has come to pass. And so modernization, and clearly for the levels of money that this is going to entail. And remember, the water treatment plant has floated numbers in the neighborhood of 20 million. So combine the 2, and we're up to 88 million in that range. So clearly the project can't all be done at the same time. It's not a project that is going to allow that to happen. And so one of the things that the board has requested from the engineers and from the executive director is a flow chart schedule showing what things need to happen first. And it's never really been defined yet as to what needs to happen first and second. And maybe two things need to happen at the same time. It's that way. So we're looking forward to having that piece of information. That's a key piece of information for planning. And so, again, hold on to your wallets. Huge amount of money.
Any update on the repeated questions about conversations with Buena Vista since they're staring down similar numbers for their upgrades?
There's been discussion about that. And currently, the issue that is in the way of continuing going forward with that is crossing the interstate. That seems to be a major issue. But it can be resolved. You know, you can dig channels and bore stuff, but it's a big deal to go under there. And that's what's happening, but it's not a dead subject. So it comes up and hopefully it can happen because both localities are faced with huge bills. And of course, Lexington roughly splits this money with Rockbridge County. So it's not all Lexington, half of it is roughly in there. So, and this is a big price for the county as well. And so we'll be faced with having to develop an implementation schedule as to what we can afford and what comes first, what comes second. And so this is one of the biggest single expenditures I think this city will ever have made. Can we think of one that's been bigger lately? This is huge. End of report.
Thanks, sir. Questions?
Did you say you mentioned $20 million figure for the water plant? I thought that was closer to 40 than it was all.
You're correct. The original engineer's estimate was 20,
right,
but they came back and said, well, we're not getting bids from contractors and the bids that they're seeing. And none of this stuff has gone out for contractors' bids.
Right.
None of that. And the bids that they're seeing in other localities has pretty much added 50% to the original engineering estimates, at least 50%. So that would have made 20 into 30.
right.
And so then they added some cushion to that, and that's where the 40 came from.
So
But still, so if you added this other 20 to this, that'd be over 100. But
right,
yeah,
that's what I was getting at. Between the two, we're talking about $100 million project,
we could be, yes.
which is a nice round number to work with.
Right, right. So,
No,
so how
I mean,
to pay-
we're getting to the point where it's almost. I'll stop talking right there.
just throwing it out there, and Mrs. Bell could help me out on this a little bit. It would push the city over its borrowing limit to have to do something like that. So the city is no way in a position to bite off that whole thing. It would have to be parceled out and implemented in stages in there. And so that's why the board of directors for MSA insisted at our most recent meeting and at a previous meeting that this schedule of priorities be established ASAP.
If it's helpful to add some perspective, this came up in our landfill meeting on Monday when I brought up the fact that Bristol, Virginia is closing their landfill to the cost of about $60 million just to lock it down. And we're to some extent, we're not in this alone, but that's just to stop an operation. This is to fund a continuing operation for the growth of our region.
Right, and visualize where the funds have to come from. And, we're going to be on bended knee looking for federal government assistance and state assistance for this, but I don't see it, I'm just speculating now, as being 100% assistance. So how much we have to shoulder is yet to be determined. And a little piece of extra information, I'd mentioned before at the last meeting that the MSA had received approval from the state Department of Health for a $3 million loan, a low interest loan, and paperwork has been sent and received by MSA that loan currently would be 1% less than, say, what we would have to pay for the fire truck. It would be 2.5 instead of 3.5. It'd be 1% less than what otherwise, and that would be funded by the state. And we're in line we've always got our hand out for a request every time there's a possible distribution of money from the health department for the water and the wastewater plant. And so hopefully some more will materialize. But 3 million is 3% of 100 million.
Drop in the bucket. Thank you, Mr. Alligood. And we'll stay tuned for updates as the progress on the Maury Service Authority. Next item on the agenda is the mayor's report. I have a couple of items for you. I'd like to bring forward for your consideration as an appointment to Threshold, Marissa Charlie, who I spoke to, works at Washington Lee in the Shepherd program and would like to serve on Threshold. And she would be filling a vacancy that of a 3-year term that would expire June 30 of 2024. Yes, 2024. And I'd ask for council's consideration.
The move to approve appointment of Marissa Charlie to Threshold ending January 30th, 24.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Ms. Strawn,
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler, Mr. Alligood,
Aye.
Mr. Ayers,
Aye.
Mr. Smith, Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all. The other is for Community Services Board. Mike Gilmore and James Gira both are seeking to continue their service to our community. A 3-year term that would expire December 31st of 2025. And I would ask for council's consideration for Mike Gilmore and James Gira.
I move to appoint Mike Gilmore and James Guerra to the Community Service Board.
Second.
Have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Ms. Strawn,
Aye.
Mr. Ayers.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler. Aye. Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you all very much. Additionally, I'd like to propose, we have our interim attorney. We've talked about having a process for vetting a permanent attorney and legal services. And the city manager has an RFP document and a advertisement document. I would suggest to council that we appoint a committee of 2, perhaps, to work with city staff, Robbie Bailey and Jim, to float this application process and determine which would better serve the city, the RFP or the advertisement. And that committee to work with Robbie, vet any applications that come in, get the top 3 and set up interviews for all of council to work on all 3. So it's an idea, a process, and if that suits everyone, we'll have make some appointments and have the city manager follow up with you for firming up that process. Hearing no objections, we'll work towards that. And that's all I have for my report, and I'll call on the city manager.
Can I make one comment, please?
Please.
The 3-year term for Ms. Charlie, I think, would be the end of December of 25.
She's filling a vacancy that expires in 24.
Okay.
I looked it up. So it's a
Okay.
3-year term, so it's been vacant.
Finishing one. Okay.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Yeah. Your math is right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Little good news on the litter and recycling front. We received a grant from the DEQ for just over, well, almost $11,000 for recycling programs in the city. 2 different grants, but like I said, about $11,000. A little bit more on recycling. We received a report earlier this week from Earth Magic Recycling in Buena Vista. That's the company that takes glass and recycles glass and recycles it into landscaping sand. And they've taken 21,550 pounds of glass from the city of Lexington so far. And I guess sold most of that at this point in time as sand. So tell your friends and neighbors to look at their gardens and their lawns and see if they could use some attractive landscaping sand and recycle some more glass. Public Works is going through the process of bridge review, grading our bridges with VDOT. And this is a factor that is used when we look at applying for grants through VDOT for bridge repairs, state of good repairs on our bridges. So this should happen in the next 3 to 6 months. And we do have an outside consulting firm who does these types of inspections and reports to VDOT. Little update from the police department. The staff from the police department met with the organizers of the mock convention already. That's in 2024, and in advance of the presidential election, Washington Lee holds that event. Big parade, I guess, around town with the floats of all the 50 states. So we're already planning that. We're already working with those folks and happy to be taking the time in advance to work with them. This past week, the department walked 21 hours in walking patrols in the community. Corporal Hartbarger finished his general instructor training. From the Lexington Fire Department, the planning for the January parades weekend has started, and the department hosted the preliminary meeting for the partner agencies from around the region that assist us with both the Martin Luther King Day parade and the Lee Jackson Day parade coming up in January, big weekends. The department also hosted members of the Rockbridge Sheriff Department who participated in a critical incident stress debrief after the recent fatal shooting here that the department was involved in. The department assisted Rockbridge County Fire and Rescue to extract a driver trapped inside their vehicle after a very serious accident in the south end of the county. This activity took nearly an hour for a full crew of local fire and EMS staff to remove the injured driver and get them to the waiting helicopter for evacuation. And this is an excellent example of why working together in our region enhances the services we all receive from local fire and EMS personnel. And just as a reminder, I will be taking some vacation time through December 21st through the 29th. I will be available by phone, text, and laptop if necessary. So I'm in another state, Colorado to be exact. And that's my report, Mr. Mayor. Questions?
Thank you, Jim. Any questions of the city manager? Very good.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I may do one other thing, I got a letter here I'd like to read as well, if I could, please.
Please.
Okay. It says, Dear Jim, on behalf of the Rockbridge Christmas Baskets, I would like to thank you so much for the support our organization receives from the city of Lexington, particularly the Department of Public Works. The staff is phenomenal, and I cannot sing their praises highly enough. You have our deepest gratitude for all the city has done for us throughout the years. Just for the record, in 2022, we distributed more than 80,000 pounds of food to 1,130 families in the Rockbridge area. I wish there was a way I could make each of them appreciate the essential part you play in our effort. Support such as yours is what has made our program such a success for 75 years, and we absolutely could not have done it without you. All my best wishes to you, the city, and particularly DPW for a Merry Christmas and a prosperous and happy 2023. And I would second that. Our DPW staff does a great job year in, year out helping with that program. So.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for sharing that. And many hands certainly make light work. The Horse Center, who does a great job of hosting that event for the past several years, and all the unsung heroes that are involved in making that, getting that accomplished for families that may not otherwise have a Christmas. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you to Department of Public Works for their efforts and support. Next item on the agenda is City Attorney Report. Jeremy, don't know if you have any words of wisdom or salutations from your Zoom.
No, none of the above. I just working on a few things with city staff on some enforcement issues, and going to be working on some of these closing documents for the ladder truck loan. Other than that, that's what we're working on right now. If you have any questions about any of those things, obviously I'm happy to answer them.
Excellent. Members of council have any questions for Jeremy? All set, Jeremy. Thank you. Appreciate your service, and thank you for being with us tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Next item is new business, 15.1, the Virginia Horse Center requests to extend the 1% discretionary lodging tax. As this tax has typically gone to pay a loan provided by Cornerstone Bank, as many of you may be aware, I'm employed by Cornerstone. So I'm going to turn the gavel over to Vice Mayor Alexander and let her lead this piece of the meeting. Marilyn?
Thank you. I believe, do you have anything to add to this, Mr. Hallis, or would you like for Ms. Thomas to start the proposal?
The only thing I would know, Ms. Vice Mayor, is that Spencer Suter, the county administrator, and I were approached by Ms. Thomas and Mr. Glenn Petty, who's the CFO and CEO respectively, about the 1 cent tax, 1% tax. That's, am I getting that right? 1%.
1%.
Yep. Sometimes I'll leave that cent and percent out of my thinking, but 1% tax that is has been approved and available to the Horse Center so that they could deal with their debt service. Obviously, the Board of Supervisors is also taking this up. They've had a meeting on this matter. Typically, there's been some desire to act in unison with the city and the county. The county has, if you will, taken some time now to set this off to do some additional work, I think, with their EDA to make sure the EDA is in line with their role. We also need to go to the IDA. And as I pointed out in my briefing, we also have to approve an ordinance should City Council want to extend this tax, because currently our ordinance says that it ends. And since city code requires a public hearing, we'd have to hold a public hearing to take any action. So I do support looking at this very carefully and doing what we can to support the Horse Center. I would also note, though, that because of the reasons I already stated, we're not ready to act tonight. I would not recommend council act tonight. We need to have that public hearing. We need to get the IDA input, maybe see what the County Board of Supervisors are also thinking, and then consider any action the City Council might want to take. So that's all I will share at this time. And Ms. Thomas has some more information regarding the details of her request.
Ms. Thomas, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you, Madam Vice Mayor, and good evening, City Council members. First of all, I'd like to say that Mr. Petty regrets that he could not be here tonight, but he is on a plane home from Seattle, and so I am here to represent the Horse Center. Before I begin my remarks, I just want to say, when I talk about the additional 1%, I acknowledge that the city has capped that at $61,000, but it's very hard for me to talk about it and put that caveat in each time. So just rest assured that when I talk about the additional 1% from the city, I mean the $61,000. So to give you a little bit of history, initially in 2014, and then most recently in 2017, the city approved an additional 1% of the occupancy tax. In 2014, when this was done, it was to pay for the fact that the Horse Center was delinquent in their annual debt service payment to the USDA. That was the time when management was changed. And when I was part of that management change, when I came in, we were $137,000 delinquent to the USDA. So the first round of the 1% went to bring us current with the USDA, as well as to fill the gap between what the 2% was collecting and the 604,555 that we have to remit to the USDA annually. In 2017, when the 1% was approved, that was to make money available for the debt service to USDA, but that the excess could be used for deferred maintenance projects. And we talked to City Council, we talked to the Board of Supervisors and said, we've got some really pressing matters. Stormwater runoff was really affecting everything we did, and we really couldn't do some other improvements because they would have been washed away as soon as we did them. So we got the loan from Cornerstone, and with the understanding that the additional 1% would be able to be used for debt service. That debt bears interest at 5.85% and has a balloon payment of $600,000 due in 2026. And that balloon payment is due because we could not pay off the loan in the amount of time that the 1% had been approved. It was going to take us longer to be able to afford to pay it off. So we said, we'll make a balloon payment and we'll address that balloon payment as we get closer to the date that is going to occur. We are requesting that the 1% be extended through 7/31/2029 at this point, so we can refinance that balloon. we're trying to get ahead of the interest rate increases. When we first started these conversations with the 5.85% was at that point going to go to 6. It now will be north of 6. I've confirmed with the bank today, depending upon how long this process takes, I don't know what the interest rate will be. I know that you're aware that we have additional money coming in right now from the historic horse racing monies that are coming in from Churchill Downs. Were part of the state budget or state appropriations for the next biennium. We have been approved a very small percentage of a very big pie. So right now we are on track to receive about $1 million this year. We would expect that to be over $1 million next year because more horse racing machines are being put in, but we don't know that that is going to last past 2 years. That money is to attract new business to the state and to deal with some of our, to improve the facility to attract additional shows to the Horse Center. Jim, I think, has provided our 10-year projects list. It totals $12 million of what we have priced. Some of those prices were done in accordance with the master plan about 4 years ago. And as Mr. Alligood has said, those prices have increased and we're not exactly sure how high those might be. Also, there's some items on that list that we have not even bothered to price, but we've got a 35-year-old plus building or facility. It has the original heating system in it. It has the original generator and it has the original sprinkler system. And every time the sprinkler people come, they're not sure they'll be able to find the part to fix that. So we don't know at what point we're going to have to replace that heating system, which we can't get parts for, and the sprinkler system, which we can't get parts for. So right now we have a lot more needs than we have money in the bank or that we think will be coming in from the historic horse racing. Pre-COVID, we had no working capital. I had no idea from time to time whether I was going to make payroll. I had some board members that I knew, but they knew that I might call them on Tuesday and say, I need money this week because to make payroll. There were times management didn't get paid. The good news is that post-COVID, I now have working capital. We were able to take our PPP money and our employee retention tax credit money and put it aside as working capital. And I now have about 3 months, not quite, but about 3 months of operating reserves. For a nonprofit, best practices would be between 3 and 6 months. So we're just barely getting there right now, but we are, we are improving. The occupancy tax has been relatively stable in 2015 through 2019. In 2020 and 2021, it was very, very low, as one would expect. And then in 2022, it came back very robustly. 2020, fiscal 2023 for us is looking like it's somewhat on par for where it was last year. To date, through November, the city is up about 10%, but the county is down about 4%. So it is uncertain whether we will continue to see the levels of occupancy tax collection that we had last year going forward.
May I ask, is Rockbridge County also committed to 61,000, or is it a different amount that they're committed
Oh, no,
to?
Rockbridge County is the whole 0.5%. And Rockbridge County last year was about 300,000.
Okay, thank you.
So right now, are you able to make your debt payments to the USDA?
Yes.
And are you able to make that with the original 2%?
Last year we were, but out of the last 6 years, only, hold on a second. Out of the last 7 years, 3 of those years we could have done it out of 2%, and 4 of those years we could not have.
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. So, and of course we're in a pandemic.
Right.
Right. Okay.
But so two of the non-pandemic years we would not have been able to.
Okay. So as we look forward, if the county, if they're going to be contributing this year approximately $900,000 to the Horse Center, right?
They contributed about 900 last year. They are at 4% down right now.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So about $900,000
Mhm.
roughly. And the city of Lexington is slated to probably contribute about $261,000.
Right.
So that's significant, almost $1.2 million
Mhm.
in this year. So what is the debt service owed this year?
It would be $754,555.
So
$555.
a considerable surplus this year.
Yes.
And even potentially a considerable surplus next year, a considerable surplus potentially the next year. So if we were not to extend the 1%, if the county were not and the city were not, do you feel any concern about paying that balloon payment, considering the $484,000 paycheck protection money that you told us about a couple weeks ago, plus the fact that right now, the 1%, the 2% plus the 1% is yielding some pretty good funding.
As management and being prudent management of a nonprofit, I would not recommend using the paycheck protection money to fund debt. That is my reserves, and I do not want to go back to not knowing that I'm going to make payroll.
Okay.
I think that we need to look at what other resources we have for debt service. I think your point is well taken about whether if occupancy tax levels, collections levels remain as they have for 1 year,
so
that we would be able to do that. But I don't think that 1 year makes a story to tell.
Absolutely. So put aside the paycheck protection, $484,000.
Mhm.
And I know we certainly, 1 year doesn't, I understand the conservative budgeting, but what I really was glad that the city could do was in 2017, you asked for a specific amount of money to meet your obligations.
Hmm.
And we said, you got it. And we came through with $61,000, even in the pandemic, when the 1% yielded $57,000. And
No, you paid 57,000.
No.
You paid
are you sure? I thought we said we would meet 61 no matter. Okay. Well, aside from that,
you pay what you collect with a cap of 61.
So do you feel that if we just stayed level for the next few years, I mean, the math is pretty clear that you're still going to have a significant surplus, even if you pay that balloon payment?
I think we would have to run the math. I also, as I said earlier, I don't think a 1 year a story makes.
Okay.
And so we started this conversation with the idea that we need to get a low interest rate. I don't know that we would have started these conversations just so that we were ongoing with them and not have to rush at the last minute. But the push at this point has become, we want to lock in an interest rate because we don't know what the markets are going to do. And I think that the other thing is we're here to talk about what your concerns are, what additional information you need, because we've got to go to the IDA. And there's a process we have to go through. So I didn't come here tonight looking for any action. I came here tonight to talk about this and see what are next steps.
I'm just trying to, I totally appreciate that. I'm just trying to get a good handle on what the 1% is needed for, because it looks like you will have more than enough funds from the county and the city to pay your current obligations.
But that's all based upon 1 year.
And additional obligations.
But that's based upon 1 year.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, that's simply, my questions, since the city of Lexington also has deferred maintenance projects. We have a capital improvement plan and everything. So that's simply my question, to make sure that you're on solid footing, no pun intended, and that we're doing right by all of our needs within the city. And our goal is to never have you default on a loan that you've borrowed. And the numbers look like you probably won't. So that's looks pretty good. So.
Well, we would like to not be in a position that we even have to question that we're going to default, and that we can turn our attention to getting more business into the Horse Center and therefore more tourism into Rockbridge County and Lexington.
Any other questions, concerns?
I have a question about, excuse me, at our work session we had last month, the topic of the state funding from the betting profits came up, and I listened to the recording again, and it was 1/25th of 1% of a $3.9 billion pool.
That I don't have all those facts. That's
Okay.
what Glenn,
Okay,
to
well-
me, we're getting about $1 million. And it's a
Well-
small percentage of a very large number.
Well, I'm going off what was on the record
Understand?
that was said last month, and that math comes up to $1.56 million, and that's a little more than $1 million. So I'm trying to get clarification on what that number is actually going to be, because I'm doing the math and I'm getting one number, and I'm hearing you saying another number, and there's a pretty wide gap there of about $500,000.
What I think that the number that we're getting 1/25th of 1%, I think that is the number that is projected at some point when all the machines are installed.
When is that,
Oh.
next year?
I don't know, but they're installing machines as we speak, and we are expecting what I understand is we're expecting the number to grow. And so eventually if this is extended past 2 years, we would get 1.5 million. But I know that every month we get a wire from Churchill Downs, and what I looked at today, the first few that we've gotten, if I you do those on an average is about $79,000 for 12 months is $1,040,000.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I think the big number is the number the lobbyists have given Glenn as what they are expecting this pot to grow to. It's not there yet.
So they don't have all the machines in right away.
They don't have all the machines in what the Rosies that they are. And I know they are looking at even additional locations for Rosies going in around the state. So even all the locations aren't in place yet.
Still building.
Yeah.
As well. Mr. Elliott?
Thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
One of the things that I haven't heard from Mr. Petty, previous presentations, as well as tonight, and I'm just curious about it. I remember years ago, before the state pulled the plug on the money for the Horse Center, that there was discussion about how long it would take the Horse Center, these were projections, to be self-sufficient.
Mhm.
Where do we stand on that?
We work every year to try to make ourselves self-sufficient. We, at this point, rely upon about $500,000 of philanthropy a year to balance our budget, the difference between what it costs to operate the facility and what our shows or renting the facility brings in. I think that the fact that the state put the 2 percentage points in place when they turned this over to the private board was an indication that they realized that the Horse Center would never be able to provide the debt service funds. That the state was putting a mechanism in place for that to occur. But I know my board is very focused on trying to reach operational break even, but we are about a $5 million organization. We have to raise about $500,000. So we have to raise 10% of our revenue from from philanthropy. And all of our construction projects out there, the renovation of the 2 barns and the new big ring have all been done through philanthropy.
I remember Mr. Petty talking about that
Mhm.
source of funds, but I was really interested in the self-sufficiency argument because I remember that being talked about at length when the Horse Center was first established, and then the money got withdrawn by the state. And then these private board had to be established, and then the city had to step in and the county had to step in to pay the bills, to pay the debt service, to make it happen there. And we're still doing that. And I think we're glad to do that. We recognize that the Horse Center is an asset to the community and covering the debt service. I think Mr. Ziegler covered it well. It appears as though you're well covered with the debt service with the money that you get from the city and the county at this time. And the extension of the 1% that would pay, that we use to help finance or exclusively finance the balloon payment. That's what you had said earlier tonight. And whatnot. So it has, what if that balloon payment weren't stretched out? What if it had to be paid? Could it be paid with the money that comes from the county and the city as the money flow is currently stated?
I would have to run some numbers on that to see whether if the trends from last year held, whether we would be able to pay that. I have not done that.
Right. And the reason I say that is, and Mr. Ziegler mentioned it as well, the city has capital projects. And we've got some huge ones. You heard me talk about that MSA bill that's coming due. You know, I can only imagine what we're going to have to do to make that work in there to do that. And we want to make sure the Horse Center is covered, but at the same time, I think we have an obligation to the citizens of the city as well to maximize the use of our money, the tax money, as long as the Horse Center is taken care of.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you get any indication that the General Assembly will have an interest again in supporting the Horse Center?
I think it's too early to tell. This was just put into place in July. They have not had a meeting since then. I think it will, we'll probably know more this time next year as to where they are in their deliberations about the next biennium budget.
Any other comments?
I would just say, David and Charles's points are well taken, but I would like to stress how important an asset the Horse Center is for the city of Lexington. And it is $61,000. That's what we're talking about.
Yes.
And we need whatever we do, we need to, I guess, be in unison with the county. We need to move forward together. And we also need to really do some soul searching and figure out whether that $61,000 investment, however it's used, if it's used for, capital improvement, whatever, is that a good investment for the city? And I think there is an argument to be made that it is, but that is, of course, for a future city council to.
And we are only asking for money for debt service and deferred maintenance projects. We are not seeking any operational money.
And it is coming from our lodging tax.
Yes, it is. And actually, so I want to be clear, that extra 1%, it's capped at 61,000 that we're paying, but what is it actually worth to the city? Like what does that 1% work out to these days?
At this point, I believe it's near $88,000, 87.7 or something like that, 87.8.
Okay, so it is, the city's actually, we instituted that 1% for the Horse Center, but we are in fact benefiting at least from that sliver from that 1%.
But once again, I'll remind you, that was only 1 year that you had that benefit. Every other year, the 1% collection had been under 61,000.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Oh, and actually, I would point out one other thing that a lot of people forget. For instance, the event that we went to yesterday, it was at the Horse Center. They graciously offer that space to the city, the county, from community organizations, the Rockbridge Christmas baskets. You know, they provide the space for that stuff. They don't charge for. They're offering, you know, stable space for the mounted police unit for us. So just those are all things to keep in mind as to what an asset the Horse Center is. Thank you.
100%. And just to clarify that the value of the 1%, saying that it was always less than 61, the year that we approved the additional 1%, we were basing it off of a 2016 number that was $60,786. Then in 2017, it was worth $67,418. Then in 2018, it was worth $68,569. Then in 2019, it was worth $72,783. So it immediately zoomed past the $61,000. And then it was just below, it was $57,358 during the pandemic and $55,530 during the pandemic. And then it came back to 87, and of course it's trending high. So just, you know, just so that we're completely transparent to the taxpayers. You know,
we
we
didn't do that to raise money for the city, but it is a truth that we have way more hotel stock now because of the Georges and whatnot. So that, I think that $80,000 is probably a pretty good estimate of what it's going to be moving forward, barring another pandemic. So.
And Mr. Siegler, I apologize. I've been so focused on the last few years that I had not looked back to see that several years ago, it was above the 61,000.
It's a good problem to have.
Yes,
right?
it is.
I think whatever we are able to provide the Horse Center, we have to keep in mind that the Horse Center does benefit the entire community. And that is an economic driver for the entire community, not just Rockbridge County and Lexington, but also Buena Vista. Everybody benefits. And we need to keep that in mind, not only council, but when the public hearing takes place, we hope that we hear that level of support as well. And that will be in January, you think, Jim?
I would like to suggest the second meeting in January. With the holidays coming up and the publication dates, I'm not sure it's real feasible trying to make January 5th.
Okay. Ms. Thomas, do you have any questions for us?
I do not. I just would, last thing I would say is we are meeting with the county's IDA on Monday, just so that you know what the process is with the city. I'm sorry, with the county.
Okay.
Thank you all for your time and happy holidays.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. Next item on the agenda is 15.2, consideration for requests from Byther Outdoor Fitters to operate a kayak and bicycle tourism business at Jordan's Point. I'll call on City Manager to introduce this subject.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was really happy to hear that this was an item of conversation at the outdoor meeting several days ago from Councilmember Ayers and Councilmember Smith. Just by chance, I guess we've had the interest indicated by Mr. Byther of putting together a business down in Jordan's Point Park and throughout the community, somewhat similar to one he already runs in Florida. Mr. Byther is a hometown guy, would like to come back here to Rockbridge in Lexington and provide these services, these activities to individuals who are visitors to our area and also who are maybe residents of our community. I noted in my briefing, and I would ask in a few minutes for Arnie to come up, Arnie Glazer, our planning director, to tie in some of the comprehensive plan references as to recreation in Jordan's Point Park, and also the Jordan's Point Park plan itself as to how it calls out certain activities in the park that would be beneficial to the community and bring more life to the park, if you will, more uses to the park. I do recommend that City Council would ultimately approve this agreement that will be written by the city attorney and myself, and that I signed this agreement. You'll see some of the conditions I noted there. Of course, the agreement itself would contain insurance provisions, licensing provisions, taxes, et cetera. All the typical agreements or provisions you'd see in agreement of this nature. So that's pretty much my briefing. If council has any questions, I'll be happy to take those now, but I can also defer and let Mr. Byther come up and share a few words of his vision regarding the business he's proposing.
Very good. Members of council have any questions for the city manager or for Arnie? Hearing none, Will, come on up and welcome. Glad you're here.
Right. Good evening. Thank you guys so much for your time. And sorry, Mr. Hallis might have covered some of what I'm going to go over here. My name is Will Byther. I was born, raised, grew up, went to school here in Rock Ridge. The past 10 years, I lived in Sarasota, Florida. The most recent 5 of those, I've operated a successful kayak and paddleboard tour business based on Lido Key there in Sarasota. I find myself missing the wonderful mountains and rivers we have here, as well as my family. And I figured I could bring a branch of the business here to bring fun, exciting, and safe outdoor activities for our community and tourists. With my time in the industry, I think I can bring that knowledge back here and provide an activity for the betterment of everyone. I think Jordan's Point Park is a perfect central location for multiple outdoor activities. We would specialize in paddle sports and e-bikes. In the beginning, at least, we would need very little space other than for a truck and trailer right near the boat ramp there at Jordan's Point. We'd kind of be off to the side and out of the way. Any boating vessels staged near the river would be off of the ramp, so as not to hinder any other locals or tourists or anyone trying to access the facility. I think the ability to vend or accept walk-in business in the park is kind of paramount for our business plan. As far as trying to turn a profit, being able to take walk up in the park has been huge for our business in Florida. We do operate a very similar scenario in Sarasota, Florida. We operate out of a county park. We have an agreement with the county. We list them as additional insured, which we do the same here, so that in the event of an accident resulting in a lawsuit, you guys are fully covered. My apologies. We regularly partner with local environmental groups at our Florida location to offer free cleanups and involve the activity at no cost. And we would plan to do cleanups and partner with environmental groups here as well to keep our waterways and environment clean. Our plan for paddle sports in the beginning would be rentals all season long. Roughly, we'd operate from mid-May when kind of the college graduations, commencements, things like that begin. Could start getting tourists in through the end of October, as far as warm weather and good outdoor activity goes. When the water level allows, we try and do tours from the Beans Bottom Bridge access down to Jordan's Point, or potentially from Jordan's Point down to Ben Salem Wayside, or if even a longer trip would be all the way to Glen Morey. On the e-bike side of things, this is a new venture for us. We are experienced in paddle sports. The bikes would be new. We begin with guided tours only to optimize our safety. And I've spent this fall kind of pedaling around, looking at potential routes in the area, and would use the winter and early spring to kind of lock in the safest, most optimal routes to hit various points of historical importance in the area and let everybody have some fun. Our tours on both land and water, as I said, would focus on our area's rich history and also promote environmentalism and conservation. And it would bring an outdoor experience that could excite community members of all ages, backgrounds, and experience. With the exception of permission to use and access the park, we're totally self-sufficient. We're insured. We would insure you guys as well and bring everything to the table that the business needs to operate. The only thing I could ever potentially think of to ask for it would be permission for signage coming into the park. That could be something that's seasonally permanent or something we put in and take out every day, just so people, our customers or potential customers, know where we're at in the park. We are flexible, open to suggestions, advice, any changes, and hope the business grows and expands to other activities in the future. Thank you guys so much for your time. I'm happy to try and answer any questions.
Thank you, Will. The members of council have any questions for Will?
I have one. So your Florida operation, would you continue with that or? would-
Yes, I do have 2 full-time employees down there, and it actually kind of works out. We're busier there in the winter. So I've been up here. I actually was in a car accident in the spring. I've recovered up here, but I basically just go down there when it's busy. But that operation is fully taken care, self-sufficient without me.
And your arrangement with the locality down there, does it pretty much follow this structure, the 5%? I'm just curious.
It does, yes,
Okay.
yes, sir. That's kind of what I based that off of, and that is a negotiable. That's kind of just based off of our Florida agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I noticed the sites that you were considering presenting in the land tour, the bicycle tour. I would just like to suggest perhaps you talk to Eric Wilson, who was here from the Historic Society, as well as Gene Clark with tourism, to see what other sites you could possibly add to your tour.
Okay, thank you, yeah. And I think the mill house there at Jordan's Point and the historic bateau, we would kind of include that maybe in our entry with our safety and all that.
Have you had any conversations yet? I know I'm maybe jumping ahead a little bit, but have any dialogue with Buena Vista to see what opportunities might be to partner with?
I have not
idea.
gotten that far into it yet. Just based on my experience in Florida, the Beans Bottom to Jordan's Point would be ideal timing. If you start at Jordan's Point, Ben Salem would be pushing. It's a pretty long route. I've done all these stretches and then going all the way to Glen Morey, that would be almost too long of a trip. But I do plan on trying to partner with other localities.
Okay, I was thinking, you have the Beans to Jordan's leg, and then you could do a Jordan's to the PV takeout leg too, just to offer, another option.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Since it came up in our conversation, yes.
Yeah. And sort of a where people can drop off the kayak there. And so basically a pick up and drop off, so they don't necessarily bring it back to you. I mean, I don't, but that's all whatever works for you, but.
Oh, yeah. I think in the midsummer this year, water was higher than previous summers. In the midsummer, when the water's still low, you're hitting rocks all the way down. It would be mostly kind of just a paddle up the first from Jordan's Point and back. But whenever water levels allow, we will offer shuttles and pickups and takeouts and things like that.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for presenting this opportunity. I know many of us, when we were discussing whether to remove the dam or not, took a tour to Woolen Mills in Charlottesville. And one of the stops we made was a kiosk that's doing just what you're doing. And we were all very excited about the that type of opportunity in Jordan's Point Park. So I'm glad that now we can see that come to fruition.
Yeah, thank you guys. I look forward to a hopeful partnership.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the bicycle tour? Like how many bicycles, in your experience, how does that affect vehicular traffic, that kind of thing?
So I purchased 10 bicycles and I think a single digit number for a group size is about as large as you want to go. Unfortunately, Lexington is not the most bikeable city currently, but I'd hope to work and change that in the future. But yeah, I think less than 10 for sure on the individual bike tours. And like I said, we use lesser traffic roads as much as possible. My original ideal goal was to use the Chessie Trail, but I had been in talks with VMI and they have definitely vetoed me in the end on that. So, yeah, we'll be looking at mostly back roads, try and stay off of Main Street, all the traffic.
Do you use amplified sound to talk to your customers?
No, ma'am, I don't. I like to kind of stop at various points of interest. So I wouldn't necessarily be talking so much as we're pedaling.
I'm not sure how many members of council have done e-bikes, but if you haven't, I did some this summer and with my brothers and some other family members, and we generally had 4 people going. And there's not much conversation while you're cruising, and you can get some pretty good speeds on e-bikes without a lot of effort. So keeping up with the traffic and what have you is not that difficult. It's a great way to get around. It was very enjoyable for someone who doesn't cycle much at all. But
Absolutely. Yeah, I hadn't ridden much until I got into the business, but they allow people of all ages legally in Virginia. You have to be 14 years old to ride one. So it'd be 14 and up, but it allows people who are maybe slightly handicapped or not as physically fit to be able to pedal way further than you could imagine. I mean, you could go all over the county and not even really be that tired.
in the hills, that was the thing that was amazing. Being able, you look at a hill and think there's no way we'll be able to conquer this, and you just zoom right up.
Absolutely.
It's really nice. Oh, well, I spent 5 years in Jacksonville, Florida, and the drawing back of the mountains. I know exactly where you are, and wanted to be back in this community and enjoying the beautiful scenes. And the summers in Florida aren't so enjoyable either. So
And the traffic anymore isn't either. I like to hit 1 or 2 stoplights a day here.
exactly.
When we moved here, there were 5 stoplights.
Yeah. Very good. Other questions from council? If not, Will, thank you for your presentation, and I would ask for council's thoughtful consideration on this proposal. Unless, Jim, you have.
I say, Mr. Mayor, would it be helpful to hear from Arnie at all, or city council feel pretty confident in what you've heard at this point?
Sure, I hate for Arnie to waste his,
Yeah.
waste his research.
here.
Come on up.
Arnie, I'm glad you got that hour presentation for us. Step right up.
I also have to second, I love my e-bike, but that's a different issue.
So hub motor or
Mid-mounted motor, if that's the question.
mid-mounted motor? And are you talking hub motors?
It's mid-mount.
Good for hills.
Rear wheel motor, but the battery is.
Mm-hmm.
City manager just asked that I look into the comp plan and also into the George Point Park master plan, just to see how the proposal jobs with what we have in our plans. And just to quickly say that in the comprehensive plan, there are 2 strategies. One is in green infrastructure and one is in community facilities, and both of them say basically the same thing: implement the George Point Park master plan. So there is something in the comprehensive plan for what we already have listed as priorities for our George Point Park master plan. And that handout, just to show you what's in the George Point Park master plan on that first page highlighted, just did a quick word search for canoes, kayaks, vendors, that type of thing. And the first finding there is on page 3, which says this are project priorities that the consultant put together after the public process came in. And one of the bulleted points there says location for seasonal kayak and paddleboard rental truck. And the second page is more of a zoomed in map of that particular part of the George Point Park over on that westerly edge just on the other side of the soccer field, which will be moved in this particular iteration. But it does say vendor staging and vendor parking area. And the last mention is the spreadsheet that's on the last page, which is a priority matrix. And the 4th priority of the individual projects, the 4th priority that they recommended is the permeable parking surface to be added for canoe, kayak, food, and beer vendors. Actually, I added the beer. They're all slashes in between. I presume they're disjunctive and that the applicant wouldn't automatically have to do food and beer as well. But for the record, I'd be okay with that. So that's just a quick rundown of what we have in George Point Park as far as plans for vendors and canoe and kayaks. Happy to answer any questions.
I just think that information is really helpful as we have this plan and we finally get to possibly check a box that's in there. So we're actually putting it to use.
And I would just have just encourage the applicant, Mr. Byler, to work with staff on the right way to do the signage. You know, I know you said you might be willing to take it down every day, but honestly, if it's tasteful and not overpowering the beautiful park, it could be in my opinion, seasonal, that it stay there, you know, like it wouldn't be a deal breaker for me if it was tasteful and it stayed up all the time so that people know you're there, you know, when to come back or something. But I would hope that you can work with staff to figure out something that's right for Lexington, right for the park. Because we want you to succeed and we're thrilled with this.
Very good. Unless there are any other questions or presentations, I would ask for council's consideration of this request.
I move that the city council approve the request to operate the kayak and bicycle touring operation in Jordan's Point Park as requested by Mr. Byther for a period of 12 months from signing of an agreement for this purpose, but ending no later than December 31st, 2024.
Second.
Have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Before roll call vote, I'll say I hope that this is the first of many steps as we offer services and improvements at Jordan's Point. The plan has been referenced and probably a good opportunity for council to dust it off and see what other low-hanging fruit we can take advantage of. And thrilled that Will has taken the initiative to get us going down there. Roll call vote, Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Ayers.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Good luck and best wishes. Look forward to going on a tour with you. Before we go into a closed session, I'd like to pause and invite council to join me in recognizing the time and talents of Dennis Ayers. And Dennis, I'll ask you to join me down front here. I'd like to offer a proclamation and then any comments that council members would like, and you get the final word.
Oh, good.
Picture. This is a proclamation honoring the service of council member Dennis Ayers. Whereas Dennis W. Ayers was elected in November 2018 and served the citizens of Lexington, Virginia from January 2019 to December 2022. And whereas Dennis W. Ayers served as the first openly gay member of the Lexington City Council with the respect and support of his council peers, city staff, and the citizens. And whereas Dennis W. Ayers endured and survived COVID-19 world pandemic, Zoom, many lengthy late night meetings. And whereas Dennis W. Ayers promoted regionalism and cooperation in our community, especially by his service on the Rockbridge Regional Tourism Board. And whereas Dennis W. Ayers displayed great integrity, professionalism, devotion to duty, and always came prepared for the work of man. And whereas Dennis W. Ayers may now freely attend Chamber of Commerce after hour events, other fun time with plenty, especially the first and third Thursday of each month. Now therefore, as the mayor of the great city of Lexington, by the virtue of the laws of the Commonwealth of Virginia, I do hereby recognize the good work of Dennis W. Ayers. I invite all citizens in our great city to join me in pausing to duly recognize, to celebrate, and to thank Dennis W. Ayers for his many contributions to the citizens of Lexington, Rockbridge County, and the Commonwealth. Adopted this 15th day of December, 2022. Dennis, thank you. Greatly appreciate your dedication, your timeliness, and good humor and all the work that we've had in city council. Thank you. Now we'll have open mic night for any council members who would like to offer any comments.
I'll start by telling the public what I said on social media earlier today. Where is it? We will miss you, Dennis. We'll miss your expertise, your thoughtful commentary, your decision-making, and overall winning spirit as we deliberated matters of the city. We will miss you, Dennis Ayers, and we will definitely miss those comments that made us go, uh-oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll add that, you know, Dennis, I didn't really know you 4 years ago until we stood outside the polls for 13 hours. And then over the course of about 96 regular city council meetings in 4 years that started at Waddell Elementary School without masks, moved to online, moved to Lilburn Downing Middle School, and then here to Main Street. We've sat next to each other for all of those meetings, except when we were on Zoom.
Right.
And I have admired the way that you have approached all of our issues, your temperament, the way you are measured, the way that you ask questions. City Council is a team, and we worked well together on behalf of the citizens typically. And being on a team with Dennis has been an absolute pleasure. And so, like I said, I didn't know him 4 years ago. And now, after sitting next to him for 4 years, I feel like, Dennis, I text, call, whatever, like he's a friend. And so I'm going to really miss him being on this team. But I just want to, offer my personal appreciation for having a chance to serve with Dennis. So thank you.
I would definitely echo what both of them said. I've thoroughly enjoyed serving with you. In your 4 years on council, you have made a difference. Our community is better because of your service, and I really do appreciate you giving that time. And you put a lot of effort into tourism and kept us all well informed. And I feel like you built bridges on your time on council, and I really do want to thank you for that. And I learned about your love of Taco Bell, which I had no idea. But seriously, thank you for everything you've done.
Hard to add anything additional what's already been said, other than and it's been great to get to know you and serve with you on this bench. The perspective and input that you provided has helped me make more informed decisions, so I appreciate that. Also, in case you didn't know, Taco Bell is testing 2 new Mexican pizza varieties. It was on CNN, and unfortunately it's in Oklahoma City and Omaha. So maybe time for a road trip.
Maybe.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
I'd like to add my 2 cents it's been a pleasure. You've been a credit to the city, to the council, and to yourself, and it's been my honor to work with you. Thank you very much for your service.
Thank you. I have a couple things that I want to say. So the library is open. No, I want to thank the voters for giving me this opportunity 4 years ago. It's been a highlight of my life, actually, working with you guys. And I also want to take a moment to thank Jim, who's been an excellent city manager. I don't think you get the credit you deserve for all the work you put in for the city, and I really thank you. I also want to thank the nicest person in this room, and usually every room, and that's our city clerk, Janie Hostetter. And all of the candy that she's given me, all the diets she's blown every holiday. And the second nicest person in the room, Jen Bell, our finance director, who's always a bright light, and Arnie and everyone else who works at City Hall, who works every day to make our city a great place to live. And it really is a great place to live. As for my colleagues up here, I want you guys to know that I'm not going to be one of those former city council members who's camped out on Facebook and Twitter taking pot shots at you. I'm more of a visual guy, so it's probably going to be on TikTok. But we went through a lot together. We went through a couple city managers, a pandemic, 3 finance directors, 2 of Chuck's hips. So, we have gone a lot, but we held together on some pretty tough votes. And I'd like to think the city's in a better place than it was 4 years ago. And I'm also proud that it really got through it with only one major scandal. And I'm referring, of course, to the infamous Taco Bell to-go order of 2021. The inside joke is by accident, I sent something that was intended for Clint, an order from Taco Bell to the entire city council. And I took a ribbing for it because it's a very high sodium thing. It was very embarrassing. But anyway, I want to say, Frank, that the city could not have a better front man and master ceremonies than you. Marilyn, you are the heart and soul of city council, and I'm so glad I've gotten to know you better. Charles, you are a scholar and a gentleman, and I am very honored to work with you and consider my wallet held on to. Leslie, I've always considered you the Arya Stark of City Council, petite but deadly. And I want to thank you for your many lessons. But no, it's been a joy working with you. And David and Chuck, I mean, I really feel like I've gotten to know you guys pretty well. We campaigned together. We camped out there that election season, and you're better men for me for running again. I'm so glad you did it. And I just know that these upcoming third and fourth terms, you're finally going to get it right. So anyway, thank you all. I'll be missing you, and I'll think of you on the first and third Thursdays. Thank you.
Let the record show, despite texting all of council, your order at Taco Bell, no one delivered.
No, I didn't.
Garibaldi is credited with the quote, give me the ready hand rather than the ready tongue. And Dennis, your service, I think, can be summed up in that, and always meticulous in preparing and doing a great job. So citizens of Lexington and the city of Lexington are better off from your service, and hope you have a wonderful retirement and look forward to your consideration of appointments to boards or commissions or something of that nature. Next item on the agenda is our closed meeting. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this evening, and Ms. Alexander will read the closed session motion, which articulates why we're going into the closed session, and then we'll ask you to depart. We do not plan on taking any action after the closed session. You're welcome to hang around and see us come out, but I do not anticipate there'll be any action. Ms. Alexander, or sir.
Sorry, should I sit for this, or do you think it would be better for me not to be here for this?
Your choice. I'd say stay, actually.
Okay,
Please.
I'll stay. Can you? Actually, I'm gonna have to stay. So yeah, I might be able to get a ride. Somebody can give me a ride. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Oh, I can.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm good. I'll see
No,
you.
it's not good. Well, if you need me.
Okay, well.
If we abandon them.
Yeah.
Just a point of clarification, was he in the red truck?
Yes, well, he's usually in the red truck, but we drove over here together, so he's
That's
taking.
So I move that Lexington City Council convene in a closed meeting in accordance with section 2.2-3711 subsection A, paragraph 3 of the Code of Virginia for the purpose of discussing and considering the acquisition of downtown real estate for a public purpose, and section 2.2-3711 subsection A, paragraph 6 of the Code of Virginia for the purpose of discussing and considering the investment of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved, and where, if made public initially, the city's financial interests would be adversely affected.
Second.
Okay, it's been a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Ms. Strawn,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Siegler,
Aye.
Mr. Ayers,
Aye.
Mr. Alligood,
Aye.
and I vote aye. And